Okay. Welcome to What's Niggling Me. It is pouring fucking rain outside here and storming, so that will be the background. I don't have any videos, but do have another game of show and tell. First I'll start off with the Canada had a big win today. Well, last night. Today. Jagmeet Singh is no longer part of the NDP. That guy's, I'm pretty sure, not a politician anymore. He's a fucking loser. Carney won. I'm not surprised. We have the majority of people are uninformed. So they went with the passive talking pussy. Pierre Poilievre is too, I'm sure people would say, arrogant. He comes off smug, I guess. And they lost. He fought Trump and should have tried to show he was more water. Should have tried to show he could make a deal. Fuck, I don't got a filter in here. Whatever. I already knew it didn't matter. Both main politicians are Israeli shills and are pro-war. I already knew they were gonna fucking be losers. Maxime Bernier, the People's Party, Canada First, no foreign wars. Our country will get what they deserve for voting the Liberal. We trusted a central banker who his wife's maiden name is in Epstein's black book. See these 1,971 names? Tons of prominent people, banks, hotels. I've been through a lot of these motherfucking names over the past couple years. We will go down to Rotherwick. Never heard of it until I learned Mark Carney's wife's maiden name. Now, they were right here, Orc Software. Right here, 7 phone numbers, 2 addresses in the London, UK, where Mark Carney and his wife are living. His wife is from a very prominent family. How do I zoom in on this bitch? New computer, not sure how to do it. I don't see a little fucking zoom anywhere. I want to just go, how do I do this? Okay, we don't click that. Let's see what this looks like on the fucking camera real quick. Ooh, that's bright. Let's bring it in a bit, maybe. We gotta fucking zoom this bitch in. Oh shit. What am I fucking doing? We gotta get to the Rotherwick right here. This is, oh shit, I can probably zoom it in more. Fuck. I hope the power doesn't blink and fucking cut me out of here. Sorry. Right here. See where it says Diana? Right here. This right here is Mark Carney's wife's home phone number and work phone number. Now I believe, knock on wood, I'm not trying to dox nobody. I imagine that everybody that's been named in the Epstein Black Book years ago has changed their numbers and names. Let's just check the camera and see. You can see that. Can I zoom in a little more for you? Oh my god. How the fuck am I supposed to see wherever this is? Holy shit. That is fucking zoomed in. Oh, some Rothschilds. Yeah, there's multiple on here. Multiple in Epstein's fucking contact list. Rich Rothenberg. Here we go. Oof, it looks kind of rough, eh? Right here. That's Diana. Mark Carney's wife. Don't know why. His sisters. What's really funny is Jeffrey Epstein's retracted Black Book they tried to put out. What a joke. Look at how redacted that is. Nick Bryant, though. Nick Bryant hooked it up. Got this bitch unredacted for me. Cool noise. Can I go back? I'll show you some Rothschilds. There's a lot. Oh, it's not going to be zoomed in though, eh? I highly request pausing and zooming in on contacts if you're interested. Geez, where are we at? Let's go with the D, because they like to put a DE in front of Rothschild a lot of times. Fuck, I need this shit zoomed back. It's tough to navigate. There's fucking 2,000 names almost on this bitch. They want to smoke my joint. Ooh, this guy right here. That guy's a real piece of shit. Glenn Dubin. Real sick fuck. Man, going through this is a lot of work on the computer like this. I normally do it on the phone. A lot easier to do with your fucking finger. I highly recommend. It's very simple. And you can go and do your own fun research. There's also lots of addresses in here. If you're into homes, you'd be amazed at a lot of these people's addresses where they live. Multi-million dollar layers. Look at this one. Princess Olga of Greece. Why does Epstein have her phone number? Okay. What's going on here? Why do I have the fucking election on here? I don't want this. Oh, because apparently there's a second Black Book. I haven't looked at that. Okay. To my original show and tell topic. Let's go right here. I read this article before, but it's different, I think, now that we got visuals for show and tell. So this is August 26th, 2001, 4 in the morning. This person writes this article. New York's top cop heading to Israel to trade advice about NYPD anti-terrorism tactics in exchange for help in cutting off the Big Apple's supply of the club drug ecstasy. Ecstasy was readily available years after this in Canada. I'm unsure about right now. MDMA's way more popular, less dirty. Israeli officials will roll out the red carpet for Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik when he arrives in Jerusalem for 4 days of meetings with officials. Okay? This is just going to be a little snippet of a whole big movie, whole big documentary. And we'll just touch on, this will be the first official visit to the Holy Land for Kerik, who said he spent a few days in the country nearly 20 years ago while working as a bodyguard for Saudi Arabia's royal family. Okay, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, that the police commissioner on 9/11 worked as a bodyguard for the Saudi royal family. Okay? Now on this trip, what this article doesn't get to touch on is what he really does there. That's 2 weeks before 9/11. He goes on that trip. Bernard Kerik, a former New York City police commissioner, traveled to Israel in August 2021. That was 2 weeks before. During his trip, he received a loan of $250,000 from a wealthy Israeli industrialist identified as Etienne Wertheimer. It's hard to find information on that person. I did before, and it was tough. At that time, I believe he was the richest person in all of Israel. The loan was part of a series of financial transactions and gifts that later became the subject of federal indictment against Kerik for tax fraud and corruption charges. That's nothing compared to what I think he did. But it gets more interesting. Kerik's relationship with Wertheimer and other influential figures, including real estate developer Stephen Witkoff, Trump's current, I don't know what you want to call him, Middle East advisor. Trump's current Middle East advisor paid Bernard Kerik, who at the time was the 9/11 police commissioner, $236,000 in rent for Kerik from 2001 to 2003. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? He eventually went to jail in 2009. Why would the current in 2025 Middle Eastern advisor for Donald Trump, a former international marble dealer, I'm pretty sure he was, like marble fucking countertops, why would he pay $250,000 in rent for Kerik? And why was he given another $250,000 by the richest man in Israel 2 weeks before 9/11, where he was the police commissioner? That's weird. That's weird. No? Holy fuck. Now, let's look at these guys. I've talked about them before. Let's get to know these guys better. Sivan and Paul Kurzberg are brothers who were involved in the Dancing Israelis incident on September 11th, 2001. Sivan was driving an urban moving systems van when it was stopped by the FBI after a tip-off from a woman named Maria, who reported seeing 3 young men taking a movie on the rooftop of a white van in the parking lot of her apartment building. When stopped by police, Sivan said, "We are Israelis, we are not your problem. Your problems are our problems. The Palestinians are the problems." This is September 11th, 2001. It almost seems like when RFK Sr. was killed and Sirhan just happened to have like a Palestinian, he was Palestinian. He had some fucking pamphlet in his fucking pocket. Why did I do that? This right here. There was a newspaper clipping in Sirhan's pocket that discussed the incongruity of Kennedy's advocacy for the oppressed while also supporting Israel over Palestine. Well, there's proof that Sirhan couldn't have killed RFK because the bullets that killed him were shot from, I think, 3 to 6 inches away from him. And Sirhan didn't get even close to that far. There's 2 shooters admitted by the FBI in the report. Just like there's 2 shooters admitted, one from the Grassy Knoll and one from the Dallas, Texas, what is it, the observatory or something, or the library? Can't remember. But from where they say Lee Harvey Oswald was, they also say there was another shot from the Grassy Knoll. Both of them. The FBI admits there's 2 shooters. It's in their documents. So Paul Kurzberg was a passenger in the van and was wearing a pink shirt when arrested. He had previously worked for the Jewish Agency and was in an Israeli army anti-terrorist unit, according to ABC News. Paul Kurzberg refused to take a lie detector for 10 weeks and then failed it, according to his lawyer. Both brothers were among dozens of Israeli Jews detained after September 11 attacks, with some facing deportation charges for overstaying their visas and other immigration offenses. The FBI and CIA concluded that the Kurzberg brothers were Mossad operatives who were in America spying on local Arabs. I know there was many more, not just them doing that. They were doing it in Florida. Side note, I know that I need to get a mic. I realize when I sit back, it's not very loud. So next step is a mic. for 0 to, I don't know, 50 viewers maybe. So we got Carrick, we got the Kersbergs, we got Omar Mamari, one of the 5 Israelis arrested after September 11th, 2001 attacks, was detained for 70 days, including 45 in solitary confinement. Despite being a young Israeli who had traveled to the United States after completing his army service, the arrests of these 5 men were reported after a woman named Maria observed them acting strangely near the World Trade Center, leading to their arrest for allegedly celebrating the attacks. So we shall read. I will read a great article written by, she'll go down as one of the best journalists of my time, Whitney Webb. There's another person that has great stuff, Ryan Dawson. Those are both amazing independent journalists that live in different countries where they can be free, because it's not safe. Like Glenn Greenwald, who I'd like to do a bio on him, because he first heard of him with Edward Snowden. It was pretty amazing what Glenn Greenwald did. The people with balls. Okay. For nearly 2 decades, one of the most... So what's amazing about these independent journalists is they file these FOIA, fucking Freedom of Information Acts, to get things uncovered. I'll finish this and read it. Then read it. I'll show you this guy while I finish this. Now, Philip Zachariah. Okay? Microbiologist who worked for the U.S. Army's Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland, was involved in a controversy over unauthorized research involving anthrax in 1992. Hey, you know what that research was? Mr. Fauci's fucking dream. Good old gain of function. This guy was playing with diseases under Fauci. Not saying he was directly linked or anything, but NIAID, that was Fauci during that time. I'm sure he would have loved to peruse through his Mr. Philip Zachariah's findings. They like to call him Zach, which I find funny. Anywhere you look him up, they constantly want to call him Philip Zach. Is it because Zachariah gives away your religion or nationality, and both? I don't know, but I know that's a common theme. But Zachariah was caught on camera secretly entering the lab to conduct unauthorized research, which included work with anthrax. Despite this, he continued to do infectious disease research for pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly after he was fired. Doesn't want to put that in here, but he was fired. and collaborated with the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Why would Fauci trust this guy? Because maybe Fauci is pro gain of function? Might have been why he needed a pardon retroactively, like 10 fucking years. Not just during COVID, during gain of function research in North Carolina. Zach was also involved in a workplace dispute at USAMRIID in the early 90s where he and Dr. Marion Rippey were accused of harassing Dr. Ayad Assad. Don't know if I pronounced that right. Probably didn't. An Egyptian-born scientist, Assad, filed a formal complaint against Zach and Rippey, and an investigation found that they had participated in discriminatory behavior. Imagine that. Soon after the 9/11 attacks, an anonymous letter was sent to Quantico Marine Base accusing Assad of plotting terrorism. This letter was received before the anthrax letters or disease were reported. The FBI investigated Assad and declared the letter was a hoax. But who would know to send something like that? Huh? Huh? It's in here. But, you know what? We'll cover it. Documents from the inquiry show that one unauthorized person who was observed entering the lab building at night was Langford's predecessor. We need water. Lieutenant Colonel Philip Zach. That's Philip Zachariah, who at the time no longer worked at Fort Detrick. A surveillance camera recorded Zach being let in at 8:40 p.m. on January 23rd, 1992, apparently by Dr. Marion Rippey. A pathologist and close friend of Zachariah's. I don't like that. According to a report filed by a security guard, Zach could not be reached for comment. In an interview this week, Rippey said that she doesn't remember letting Zach in, but that he occasionally stopped by after he was transferred off the base. After he left, he had no authorized access to the building. Other people let him in, she said. He knew a lot of people there, and he was still part of the military. I can tell you there was no suspicious stuff going on there with specimens. Zach left Fort Detrick in December 1991 over the discriminatory behavior that I mentioned already. Assad said he had believed the harassment was behind him until last October, until after September 11th terrorist attacks. He said that is when the FBI contacted him, saying someone had mailed an anonymous letter a few days before the existence of anthrax-laced mail became known, naming Assad as a potential bioterrorist. FBI agents decided the note was a hoax after interviewing Assad. But Assad said he believes the note's timing makes the author a suspect in the anthrax attacks, and he is convinced that details of his work contained in the letter mean the author must be a former Fort Detrick colleague. Brown said that he doesn't know who sent the letter, but that Assad's nationality and expertise in biological agents made him an obvious subject of concern after September 11th. You know what actually went missing from that fucking lab? UCLA's Department of Epidemiology. There's an article here, and it says lab specimens of anthrax spores, Ebola virus, and other pathogens disappeared from the Army's Biological Warfare Research Facility in the early 90s. During a turbulent period of labor complaints and recriminations among rival scientists there, documents from an internal army inquiry show. Okay. 27, right here. It is unclear whether Amos, I don't know, was among the strains of anthrax in the 27 sets of specimens reported missing at Fort Detrick after an inventory in 1992. So it's weird that Ebola, this article is written in 2002. So to look at it now, knowing this guy, where that guy worked? That guy worked under Fauci, obviously. He worked at Eli Lilly. Worked at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, then Eli Lilly, and then a company in Colorado acquired by St. Louis's Nexstar Financial Management. That's as much as I could get on this guy. The guy was never a suspect or looked into ever again. And what happened to those anthrax things? Look it up. Nobody knows. Okay. For nearly 2 decades, one of the most overlooked and little known arrests made in the aftermath. Maybe I should zoom this shit in a little bit. Put it at 100. Okay. Shortly after 8:46 a.m. on the day of the attacks, just minutes after the first plane struck the World Trade Center, five men, later revealed to be Israeli nationals, had positioned themselves in the parking lot of the Doric apartment complex in Union City, New Jersey, where they were seen taking pictures and filming the attacks while also celebrating the destruction of the towers and high-fiving each other. At least one eyewitness interviewed by the FBI had seen the Israelis' van in the parking lot as early as 8 a.m. that day, more than 40 minutes prior to the attack. The story received coverage in the U.S. mainstream media at the time, but has since been largely forgotten. And I mentioned that on the Chris Ketchum article that he wrote that I read. And ABC News, there's some articles you can find from back then. But now there's just been so much more information finally from FOIAs. The men, Savan Kurzberg, Paul Kurzberg, Oded Elner, Yaron Shmuel, and Omar Mamari, were subsequently apprehended by law enforcement and claimed to be Israeli tourists on a working holiday in the United States, where they were employed by a moving company, Urban Moving Systems. Upon his arrest, Savan Kurzberg told the arresting officer, "We are Israeli, we are not your problem, your problems are our problems, the Palestinians are the problem." For years, the official story has been that these individuals, while they had engaged in immature behavior by celebrating and being visibly happy in their documenting of the attacks, had no prior knowledge of the attack. However, newly released FBI copies of the photos taken by the 5 Israelis strongly suggest that these individuals had prior knowledge of the attacks on the World Trade Center. The copies of the photos were obtained via a FOIA request made by a private citizen. looks like on there. Let's try and zoom it in a bit for the camera. Two guys photographed right there. According to a former high-ranking American intelligence official who spoke to the Jewish Daily Forward in 2002, the FBI concluded in its investigation that the 5 Israelis arrested were conducting a Mossad surveillance mission and that their employer, Urban Moving Systems of Weehawken, New Jersey, served as a front. At least two of the men arrested were determined to have direct links to the Mossad after their names appeared in the CIA FBI database of foreign intelligence operatives. According to one of their lawyers, one of the men, Paul Kurzberg, had previously worked for the Mossad in another country prior to arriving in the United States. I wonder if it was Saudi Arabia. Another of those arrested, Oded Elner, subsequently stated on Israeli TV that the 5 Israelis had been in New York at the time to document the event. The FOIA release of the photos is notable because responses to prior FOIA requests to the Department of Justice, which oversees the FBI, had previously claimed that all of the photos taken by Israeli nationals had been destroyed in January 2014. The photos themselves are heavily redacted, making it impossible to see the Israelis' facial expressions. However, previously declassified yet heavily redacted FBI reports state that the Israelis are visibly happy in nearly every photo, even when the burning towers are in the background. The photos released are not original copies and instead appear to be photocopies of the original pictures. In addition of the original 76 pictures developed by authorities from the camera in the Israelis' possession, only 14 were released. Based on the impressions of the French website Panamza and subsequently Mint Press, 3 of these photos, despite the heavy redaction and poor quality, appear damning. Since 2001, even though the photos were never released until now, it had been known that one of the Israelis arrested, Sivan Kurzberg, was seen in a photo holding a lighted lighter in the foreground with the smoldering wreckage of the Twin Towers in the background, according to Stephen Noah Gordon, then lawyer for the 5 Israelis, as cited in the New York Times report from November 2001. The picture of Kurzberg with the lit lighter appears to be Photo 5 in the new FOIA release, yet the picture released includes a visible date of September 10th, 2001, the day before the attacks, as do 2 other photos, image 7 and 8 in the collection, whereas all other photos with the dates only the month and the year. The FOIA release did not provide any information as to apparent discrepancy dates. Here he is. On September 10th. And pointing to the World Trade Center. Well, this could be explained away as the cameras in question being programmed with a slightly inaccurate date. That doesn't seem to be the case for 2 reasons. First, only 3 out of the 14 pictures appear to carry that date, and second, previously declassified FBI reports report an eyewitness adamantly stating that Sivan Kurzberg had visited the Doric Apartments on September 10, 2001, around 3 p.m., with at least one other man, with whom he was conversing in a foreign language, and had identified himself as a construction worker to a tenant. Page 61 of a declassified FBI report. In addition, the FBI report noted that a van from Urban Moving Systems, the company that employed the 5 Israelis at the time of their arrest, was present and was involved in moving a tenant out of the complex on September 10th, and that the movers all had foreign accents. Thus, images 5, 7, and 8 may have been taken at the same complex a day before the attacks. This raises two possibilities. First, that there are two images of Kersberg with a lit lighter in front of the towers, one taken before the attack and one taken at the time of the attack, and that the FBI released only one of them. Second, that Kersberg took the picture with the lighter only the day before the attack, and his lawyer misrepresented the contents of the photo to the New York Times. Given that the background of the photo, particularly the state of the towers, is indiscernible in the recently released photo, it is difficult to determine which is the case. However, other analysts have interpreted the photos quite differently. For instance, I don't think these two get along, but it's interesting seeing his name in here. For instance, Ryan Dawson, formerly of Newsbud, cited the police report that details the clothing of some of the Israelis at the time of their arrest and used that to link identities to the redacted faces in the pictures. He believes that the Israeli holding lighter is not Savan Kersberg, but his brother Paul. Meanwhile, the person who filed the FOIA request that resulted in the picture's release, who wished to remain anonymous, thought that Omar Marmari was more likely to be the man with the lighter, since they fucking redacted the faces out of him. Both have stated that all pictures were likely to have been taken on the day of the attacks. One reason given for the appearance of the date of September 10th, 2001 in only some of the photos is due to the heavy editing, which rendered it invisible in the remaining photos. Dawson asserted that the incorrect date was due to the Israelis panicking when they were pulled over and attempting to edit the date and hour on the camera upon the arrest in an effort to hide the evidence. Another explanation put forth is that it was the result of a camera configuration error. Given the highly redacted and edited, I don't know if she's taking a shot at Ryan Dawson or legit giving him credit on a possible opinion. Given the highly redacted and edited nature of the pictures, what is most notable of all this is the fact of what is not seen, edited out in the photos. Clearly, there was an interest in preventing the public from seeing the state of the towers at the time of the photos were taken, and also in preventing the public from seeing the facial expressions of the Israelis, despite it being known from the FBI report that they are visibly happy and joyful. I remember reading that report because I can remember joyful because nobody fucking uses that word. Jovial, that's what it is. The state of the towers being edited out is particularly telling, especially considering that as to whether any of the Israelis knew of the attacks in advance. The relevant section of the FBI report that asks, 1. Did the Israeli nationals have foreknowledge of the events at the World Trade Center, and were they filming the events prior to and in anticipation of the explosion, is notably redacted in its entirety, suggesting that the FBI did not determine the answer to that question to be an emphatic no. No. Oh. Scrolling too much. What did I do? Let's go back to the top real quick. It's hard to see the Twin Towers, but especially because it's been so long. Can't believe they did that to their faces. One of the 9/11 loose end cover-ups. If images 5 and 7 were indeed taken the day prior to the attack, the question then becomes why the FBI officially concluded that the arrested Israelis had no prior knowledge of the attacks. One report from ABC News dated June 2002 suggests that the Bush administration intervened in the investigation. That report states that Israeli and U.S. government officials worked at a deal, and after 71 days, the 5 Israelis were taken out of jail, put on a plane, and deported back home to Israel. If the Bush administration had cut a deal with Israel's government to cover up the incident, it certainly would not have been the first time a U.S. presidential administration had done so on Israel's behalf. Further evidence that higher-ups in the administration intervened is the fact that then Attorney General John Ashcroft personally signed off on the detainee's release. Upon his entering the private sector as a lobbyist and consultant in 2005, the Israeli government became one of Ashcroft's first clients. A cover-up certainly seems to have happened to some extent. Between the destruction of records of the investigation and the fact that official conclusions of the investigation do not add up. In the latter case, the FBI, in a file dated September 24th, 2001, officially stated that they determined that none of the Israelis were actively engaged in clandestine intelligence activities in the United States. However, that conclusion was directly contradicted by U.S. officials a year later and by the fact that Israel's own government subsequently acknowledged that the 5 Israelis had indeed been involved in clandestine intelligence activities in the United States. In addition, new FOIA release of the photos suggests that another FBI conclusion that none of the pictures developed from the film found inside the 35mm camera depicted the Twin Towers prior to the attack was inaccurate. This may explain why the images released via the recent FOIA request were heavily edited, leaving details in the background greatly obscured, making it impossible to determine whether the photos were taken prior to or during the attacks based solely on the state of the towers. Tourists with cash-stuffed socks, box cutters, and explosives. Beyond the photos and observed activities of the so-called dancing Israelis, it is worth revisiting several other suspicious circumstances linked to their arrest that clearly show that men in question were hardly the tourists they had claimed to be. One often cited example is the fact that one of the men, Oded Elner, had a white sock-like sack filled with $4,700 in cash, as well as maps of the city with certain places highlighted and box cutters. In addition, the van in which the Israelis were arrested was oddly lacking equipment typically used in a moving company daily duties. According to the FBI, and residue of explosives was found in the van. Of the explosive residue, the declassified FBI report states, a search of the van and individuals was conducted at the time of the vehicle stop. The vehicle was also searched by a trained bomb-sniffing dog, which yielded a positive result for the presence of explosive traces. Swabs of the vehicle's interior were taken, and those samples were sent to FBI laboratory for further analysis. Final results are still pending. In total, the FBI reported that 4 items related to explosives were found in the van, and are labeled in the report as fabric sample, explosive residue, control swabs, gloves, control swabs, bomb suits, and blanket samples for explosive residue. In addition, a VHS tape and some still photographs found in the van were sent to the laboratory examiner redacted explosives unit. In addition to the strange nature of some of the Israelis' possessions in the van on their person, the company that employed them, Urban Moving Systems, was of special interest to the FBI, which concluded that the company was likely a fraudulent operation upon a search of the company's premises. The FBI noted that little evidence of a legitimate business operation was found. The FBI report also noted that there was an unusually large number of computers relative to the number of employees for such a fairly small business, and that further investigation identified several pseudo-names or aliases associated with Urban Moving Systems and its operations. The FBI presence at the Urban Moving Systems search site drew the attention of the local media and was later reported on both television and in local press. A former Urban Moving Systems employee later contacted the Newark division with information indicating that he had quit his employment with Urban Moving Systems as a result of the high amount of anti-American sentiment present among Urban's employees. The former employee stated that an Israeli employee of Urban had even once remarked, "Give us 20 years and we'll take over your media and destroy your country." It's on page 37 of an FBI report. The FBI returned to search the premises of Urban Moving Systems a month later, but by that time found the building and all of its contents had been abandoned by the owner of Urban Moving Systems. This was apparently being done to avoid criminal prosecution after 9/11 arrest of 5 of his employees and subsequent seizure of his office computers by members of the FBI NK on or around September 13th, 2001. The company's owner, Dominic Otto Suter, an Israeli citizen, had fled to Israel on September 14th, 2001. Just take a screen note of that. Two days after he had been questioned by the FBI. The FBI told ABC News that Urban Moving may have been providing cover for an Israeli intelligence operation. Surprisingly, since at least 2016, Suter has been living in the San Francisco Bay Area, where he works for a contractor for major tech companies like Google and Microsoft. According to the public records data Intellius, in 2006 and 2007, Suter also worked for a telecommunications company, Granite Telecommunications, that works for the U.S. military and several other U.S. government agencies. We're finishing up. In addition to Urban Moving Systems, another moving company, Classic International Movers, became of interest in connection with the investigation into the Dancing Israelis, which led to the arrest and detention of 4 Israeli nationals who worked for this separate moving company. The FBI's Miami division had alerted the Newark division that Classic International Movers was believed to have been used by one of the 19 alleged 9/11 hijackers before the attack, and one of the Dancing Israelis had the number for Classic International Movers written in a notebook that was seized at the time of his arrest. The report further states that one of the Israelis of Classic International Movers who was arrested was visibly disturbed by the agent's questioning regarding his personal email account. That's also in Christopher Ketchum's article he wrote in 2002. A crowded dance floor. That's a funny little title Whitney put in there. While the case of the Dancing Israelis has long been treated as an outlier in the aftermath of September 11th, what is often overlooked is the fact that hundreds of Israeli nationals were arrested in the aftermath of the attacks. According to a Fox News report from December 2001, 60 Israelis were apprehended or detained after September 11th, with most deported, and a total of 140 Israelis were arrested and detained in all of 2001 by federal authorities. That report claimed that the arrests, ostensibly including the Dancing Israelis, were in relation to an investigation of an organized Israeli intelligence gathering operation designed to penetrate government facilities. Again, 2002 Christopher Ketchum's article. The report also added that most of those arrested, in addition to having served in the IDF, had intelligence expertise and worked for Israeli companies that specialized in wiretapping. Some of those detained were also active members of the Israeli military, and several detainees, including the dancing Israelis, had failed polygraph tests when asked if they had been surveilling the US government. A key aspect of that report, compiled by journalist Carl Cameron, also states that federal investigators widely suspected that Israeli intelligence had prior knowledge of September 11th attacks. In the report, Cameron stated, the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, evidence linking the Israelis to 9/11 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It is classified information. One exchange between Cameron and host Britt Hume, included in the report, is particularly telling. Hume says, Carl, what about this question of advanced knowledge of what was going to happen on 9/11? How clear are investigators that some Israeli agents may have known something? Cameron. Well, it's very explosive information, obviously, and there's a great deal of evidence that they say they have collected. None of it is necessarily conclusive. It's more when they put it all together, a big question they say is, how could they have not known? Almost a direct quote, Britt. However, it is essential to note that Israeli intelligence did attempt to warn the US government at least twice beginning in August 2001, as did the intelligence agencies of many other countries, including France, the UK, Egypt, Russia, and Jordan. Yet no people connected to any other intelligence agency other than Israel were caught celebrating the attacks as they took place in the area, nor were accused by mainstream media of operating a large spy ring within the US at the time. One theory to explain this discrepancy is that the Mossad elements of the dancing Israelis and other alleged Israeli spies could have been part of a specific section of Israeli intelligence that were acting independently as a rogue agency. Such a possibility is not unusual given that divisions of or groups within the CIA have been known to go rogue on several occasions. 9/11 as big and acknowledged Israeli win. If the dancing Israelis, and more broadly the Mossad and the Israeli government, had foreknowledge of September 11th, why would they remain silent and not attempt to warn the American government or public of the coming attacks? In the case of the dancing Israelis, why would the Israelis celebrate such an attack? One of the detained dancing Israelis, Omar Mamari, told police the following about why he viewed the September 11th attacks in a positive light. Israel now has hope that the world will now understand us. Americans are naive and America is easy to get inside. There are not a lot of checks in America, and now America will be tougher about who gets into their country. Until Biden got in. While Mamari's statement may suggest one reason some of the dancing Israelis were so visibly happy in their photographs, there are also other statements made by top Israeli politicians that suggest why the Israeli government and its intelligence agency declined to act on apparent foreknowledge of the attack. When asked on the day of the 9/11 attacks how the attacks would affect American-Israeli relations, Benjamin Netanyahu, the current Israeli Prime Minister, told the New York Times that it's very good, before quickly adding, well, not very good, but it will generate immediate sympathy. He then predicted, much as Mamari had, that the attacks would strengthen the bond between our two peoples because we've experienced terror over so many decades, but the United States has now experienced a massive hemorrhaging of terror. Netanyahu, in a candid conversation recorded in 2001, also echoed Mamari's claim that the Americans are naive. In that recording, Netanyahu said, "I know what America is. America is something that can be easily moved to the right direction. They won't get in our way. They won't get in our way. 80% of Americans support us. It's absurd." I think that number's dropped in 2025. In addition, also on the day of the September 11th attacks, Netanyahu, who at the time was not in political office, held a press conference in which he claimed that he had predicted the attacks on the World Trade Center by militant Islam in his 1995 book, Fighting Terrorism: How Democracies Can Defeat Domestic and International Terrorism, in the clip I showed yesterday. In that book, Netanyahu had posited that Iranian-linked militants would set off a nuclear bomb in the basement of the World Trade Center. What a fear-mongering thing to write. During his press conference on the day of the attacks, Netanyahu also asserted that the 9/11 attacks would be a turning point for America and compared them to the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. That's how they call it, the new Pearl Harbor. And Netanyahu's statement echoes the infamous line from the Rebuilding America's Defenses document authored by the neoconservative think tank, the Project for a New America Century, PNAC. That line reads, "Further, the process of transformation towards a neo-Reaganite foreign policy and hyper-militarism, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor." Then again, years later in 2008, the Israeli newspaper, how do you say that? Maariv, M-A-A-R-I-V. I don't know how you say that. But it reported that Netanyahu had stated that the September 11th attacks had greatly benefited Israel. He was quoted as saying, "We are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq." Indeed, it goes without saying that the aftermath of 9/11, which involved the US, leading a destructive effort throughout the Middle East, has indeed benefited Israel. Many of the US post-9/11 nation-building efforts have notably mirrored the policy paper, A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm, which was authored by American neoconservatives, PNAC members among them, for Netanyahu's first term as prime minister. And I read that before on here. That document calls for the creation of a new Middle East by, among other things, weakening, containing, and even rolling back Syria and removing Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq, an important Israeli objective in its own right. As is known now, both of those main objectives have since come to pass, each with strong Israeli involvement. Gotta love Whitney Webb. Hilarious. But we live in this information revolution, and I will partake. Because I've hated this shit for 20 fucking years. I've hated the demonizing of all brown people. It fucking pisses me off. Couldn't have a conversation with the majority of people about 9/11 because they were all for it, going to war and believing the mainstream narrative. And ignoring that the hijackers were not from Iraq and not from Afghanistan. I'm pretty fucking exhausted. It's time for me to eat and sleep. I hope anybody that's watched this has heard maybe a couple new things or something, or it's refreshing to hear it. It's been a long time since you heard it. Some of that stuff, I don't know. But I just gotta keep putting the word out of all the stuff that I feel like the majority of people don't know. And if they knew, they would stop going along with the bullshit that they're told. That my whole life Iran should get fucking wiped out. These people that run these countries aren't great, but there's so much innocent death that has to go along with it that I don't like. In the cost of war is bullshit. So many innocent people murdered, millions and millions, I think is unnecessary. I don't know if I'll do one of these tomorrow, but I will do one with it tomorrow or the next day. And we'll play some more show and tell. Think of a few things. Got many now that I got this. Just gotta be careful. I'm sure I'll get things ripped down because I don't really know what I'm allowed to show and stuff. I know no music. But then I'll put whatever back up and avoid whatever I'm not allowed to show. And I'll just tell you what they told me I'm not allowed to show. There's so much more to come. There's so much more to come. I want. This has been a big issue I want figured out. I want the public to know. Deuces.